Welcome to House of Horns. Normally, Victor is the one doing the hosting here, but we got a special episode here because it's Rams versus Seahawks, NFL Week 11, and it's a pretty hyped up matchup. Like I feel like people are talking about Rams versus Seahawks a lot more than Eagles, Lions, Broncos, Chiefs. Like, how the hell did we get to this point here, Victor? But you're gonna see us twice here on the YouTube channel House of Horns because it's a big time game. It's a game that I've been waiting on for many weeks now. And if you check out my story at si.com, they made me rank like the 15 best games remaining on the schedule from week 10 to week 18. And I had Eagles Lions number one, but then I also had Seahawks Rams in the top five. I think I had a number four. So it's a pretty big matchup. So we got to get our good friend of the show, our compa from Fox Sports, Eric D. Williams. And Eric D. Williams, and Eric, I haven't figured out what the D means, but we'll ask him right now when it comes on the show because I actually do like the way that sounds. Eric D. Williams and Fox Sports. So Eric, get on the show here. Welcome. How you doing?
What's up? Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. The D stands for Dana, like
Really?
Dana Barrows back in the day. Yeah. So,
Okay.
I don't know. That's where my mom went with it. A lot of Eric Williams out there, so maybe I should just roll with Dana. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's gonna. Boy, I like the way Eric D. Williams sounds. It's like Michael B. Jordan. Like, what was the process there for thinking about?
Hey, I
I
would
gotta have
tell
my
Michael
middle
B.
name.
Jordan I was here first.
Yeah, so you did it first. But was it a thing like, hey, you know what? There's too many Eric Williams out there, so I'm gonna go with
Yep.
Eric D. Williams.
That was exactly that. I started in the business. In my byline, it just looked weird. Eric Williams. There's a gang of Eric Williams, and so I was like, okay. And my mom always, if my mom got mad at me, it was Eric D.
Wow.
She's screaming at you to come inside, and so I was like, okay, Eric D. Williams, kind of a nod to my mom a little bit.
Is it ever Eric Dana Williams? Get in the house
Oh,
right now.
if it's Eric Dana, then the belt's coming out.
You messed up there, Eric. But yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've been wondering that. I can't believe I've never asked you. Maybe I forgot. But yeah, when you see your byline and it doesn't like look right, you want to mess with it. And for me, I remember it was Gilbert Manzano for a long time. I'm like, my full name is Gilberto. Like, I need to have the O there after Gilbert. So I ended up switching it a few years ago, and people are like, "I thought your name was Gilbert." I'm like, "Oh, my full name is Gilberto," and I just wanted to go with the full name there. So I don't know if there's a lot of Gilbert Manzanos out there, but for me, I just wanted to go with the full name there. And then Victor's middle name is Javier, and I actually like how that sounds. Like, it sounds like a soap opera star from Mexico, Victor Javier Corona. So it's a good name there for Victor. So, but yeah, enough with names here, Eric. We have a big game coming up here. Rams versus the Seahawks. Are you going to be at that game, by the way?
Yep, going to be that game forward to covering it. As you mentioned, I mean, people are kind of hyped up about this league. My editor was calling it game of the year, and I was kind of like, really?
Wow.
Okay. I mean, I'll roll with that. So yeah, to see both these teams play, obviously, tied for the top spot in the NFC West, and see how they match up.
Yeah, before Victor, you can have the next question here. I kind of want to just see where Eric takes the conversation here. So, there's so many things to touch on here. So, where do you want to get started, Eric? What are you looking forward to the most here on this matchup here?
Well, I think when you look at the numbers and tail the tape and things like that, one of the things that jumped out to me was the Seahawks are number 10 in sacks allowed. So that's the lowest amount in the league. The Rams are number 14. Obviously, these teams are much different than the Chargers. Their offensive line has stayed healthy for the most part, although the Seahawks are dealing with an injury at the center position. And are going to have a new person in there. So that's something to watch for, I think, in terms of the Rams trying to take advantage of them defensively, maybe some double A gap blitz from the Rams with a new center in there for the Seahawks. And then the other thing I think is, there's a lot of talk about the Rams using 3 tight ends, which I think they use 44% of the time, and were very effective running the football against the 49ers. I don't expect them to do that again. I think that was a game plan matchup specifically for the 49ers. Their injury, little up front in terms their defensive line, and then they don't have Fred Warner. And so when you look at the front seven for the Niners, a lot of inexperience. And so I think McVay just kind of took advantage of that inexperience, got them kind of thinking and reacting, and was able to create some big plays because of the inexperience with that front seven, which is different than they normally face. And so along with that, Puka and Devontae only played like 50% of the snaps. So they actually kind of got to rest those guys, knowing that you're going to be facing the Seahawks next week. So I think we're going to see McVay go back to playing more 11 personnel, also because the Seahawks are pretty good up front. They're pretty stout. And so their weakness, in my opinion, is their secondary. So get those little guys out there with Puka and Devontae. Puka's a great blocker in the run game, and they can run those 12 personnel plays in 11 personnel. So those are a couple of things I was thinking about and kind of getting ready for this game.
Eric, I love having you on because it feels like every time I write a rundown, you're right ahead of me whenever I'm about to ask you a question. I said, I'm gonna read you exactly what I had. Both of these teams have been using heavy personnel to set up the passing attack. Gilbert brought up a great point during our post game that McVay will go back to 11 personnel for this matchup. So since the Seahawks have the defense to stop the 12 and 13 personnel, do you see McVay throwing a curveball here against Mike McDaniel? But so instead of me asking you, because you answered that question, let's flip it over to the other side and the Seahawks, which I saw a great tweet from Greg Olsen in terms of, hey, like the Seahawks are using heavy personnel to set up their passing attack because they're not able to run the ball. And you just mentioned the fact that their center is probably not going to play in this game. How can Chris Shula take advantage of that? And how do you see them attacking this Seahawks heavy personnel?
Yeah, when you look at the Seahawks, you're right. They run a lot of 12 personnel along with 11 personnel. It's about equal when you look at the numbers. And it's like they did when Russell Wilson first got there, his first few years with the Seahawks. They ran a lot of 12 to bring clarity to what they wanted to do in the passing game and make it easier for the quarterback to see where he wants to go with the football. Along with that, they had pretty good pass catchers at tight end. And the Seahawks have that now with the kid out of Miami and Barner. So they're good run blockers, and they're also good in the pass game in play action. That said, I mean, you just went out and signed the kid from New Orleans. You got Cooper, who played pretty well playing against his former team, and then obviously Jackson is maybe the best receiver in the league right now. So that would kind of lend you to think that they're going to go more 11, along with, I think, like Seahawks, the weakness of Rams defense is their secondary. So if you can get more little bodies out there and try to take advantage of individual matchups, I think that makes sense for Seattle. And like you said, they're struggling to run the football. So why not just go ahead and spread them out along with, the fact that you have a new center in there and see if you could take advantage of them that way.
Gilbert, go ahead.
Yeah, Eric, I had a different question, but now that you brought up Arroyo, and this has kind of been on my radar, and you've touched on this too on the Rams draft for 2025, and their first pick, it was technically a second round pick, and Terrence Ferguson, and I remember, and I want to say that Ferguson was drafted ahead of Arroyo, and when I saw that pick, I'm like, why didn't you go with the kid from Miami, who's a little more, at least when it comes to pass catching, he was a little more polished, but I think Ferguson was a little more versatile. So have you been keeping tabs on that kind of that selection there for the Rams, going with Ferguson over Arroyo? And then Arroyo's doing well. He kind of got started a little more quicker with the Seahawks. Ferguson had to earn it a little more, but now he's starting to get going there.
Yeah.
How do you view those two fits there? And do you think the Rams made a mistake there, or both of these guys are in the right places for the right fit there with Seattle and LA?
I think both the guys are where they're supposed to be. I believe Ferguson in front of Arroyo, but I'm not positive. I'd have to look that up. For me, Ferguson makes sense because he can get down the seam because of his speed. I think he was the fastest guy out of all the tight ends at the combine. I think he ran 4.63. And he's a big guy, big body, just in terms of his size, his length. And so I always thought he was a better fit for what McVay wants to do in terms of a move tight end. He already has guys that can play inline. And he wanted another toy. He wanted another, playmaker for Stafford. I think the thing with McVay is his offense is so intricate, and it takes a while for him to develop trust in guys that he's bringing in. Obviously, Puka was unique to that, but you're seeing it with Corum. Like Corum, second year, has finally earned the trust of McVay, and he's starting to get touches, and you're starting to see him make plays. I just felt like for how they were going to use Ferguson, he maybe made a little bit more sense because they want to use him down the field, where Arroyo is more of a route runner, in my opinion, more of a guy like Brock Bowers that can create separation over the middle of the field. And I think is more of a wider body, more of a bigger body, more of a running back type as a tight end. And I think that kind of fits how, the Seahawks want to play with all the play action and all the crossing routes and all the throws that you're going to make over the middle of the field in traffic. I think Arroyo is more of a chain mover, and I think Ferguson is more of a chunk guy that can get you big plays down the field.
Yeah, I just checked. Ferguson was number 46, and then Arroyo number 50. So he went 4 picks after the Rams took Ferguson. I remember I started thinking like, why they didn't go Elijah Arroyo, but yeah, that was a great breakdown of what they bring to the table there. But Victor, I'll let you kind of dictate the pace here. Should we stick to the offense here on Seattle, or where do you want to go?
I actually have. I kind of want to ask both of you guys what, in terms of this matchup, who is it a bigger matchup for? Like, is it the Seahawks? Is it a bigger deal that the Seahawks win, or is it a bigger deal that the Rams win? I just want to. I know they're going to face each other twice here in as we end the season, and so is the first matchup more important to the Rams, or is it more important to the Seahawks? I know that I don't know if you know this, Eric, but Gilbert's not a big believer in the Seahawks, and so I just wanted to get your thoughts in terms of what's the importance of this game for both of these
Victor,
teams.
I'm not saying I'm not a big believer. I just think they're overrated and they haven't played anybody yet.
There
And
we go.
I'm like, I want to wait and see. And Eric, I don't know if you care about stuff like this, but power rankings, people have them, and for whatever reason, the Seahawks are like 1 or 2 or 3, and I'm like,
Oh,
who have
wow.
they played? So you know how I get. I get annoyed when I see trends, and so it's becoming a thing where I'm against the Seahawks. But to me, it was like I just wanted to wait and see. But to answer the question before you get to it, Eric, I think it's a bigger game for Seattle.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I think we have to figure out, are the Seahawks for real or Fugazi? I mean, they haven't really beat anybody, and their 2 losses, I believe, are against the Bucks and week 1 against the 49ers when Purdy was playing. And the 49ers are a team that they've really struggled against. And I think you also have to consider the fact that McDonald really hasn't beat McVay. They split last year, but Jimmy Garoppolo played that last game.
Yes.
They didn't really try to win it. And so I think that's kind of in their head too. Can they really beat this team that has kind of, ran things along with the 49ers in the NFC West? So I think that, this is a chance for them to really show that they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders, to be able to get a win like this on the road. And also the fact that they're going to be playing them again in week 16 at their place. And the Seahawks definitely want to get home field advantage. That was a big thing for them when they went to back-to-back Super Bowls, is you had to go through Seattle with the way that they were playing defense, with Russell Wilson's playmaking ability, with Marshawn Lynch. I was there in that stadium covering that team day in and day out. And at that time, it was, if not the loudest stadium in the NFL, it certainly was top 3 along with Arrowhead. And then he probably, if in my opinion, would throw the Superdome in there.
The reason I wanted to ask you guys that, and you let me right into with your answer, Mike McDonald was hired by the Seahawks, and the reason they went away from Pete Carroll was to try to beat Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, right? He has success as a Ravens defensive coordinator going up against these type of offenses. So far, he's 2-3, like you mentioned. And I don't even count that, like you said, that win towards the end of the season, because they were playing with backups because the Rams had already clinched the division. So, like, Mike McDaniel, is his whole success tied to beating these two guys, or does it matter whether or not, hey, as long as he gets them in the playoffs? And then one more thing I wanted to ask in terms of one of the stats that I keep giving the guys here for whenever we do our show is the fact that Mike McDaniel, as a Seahawks, they've only lost once on the road since he's taken over, and they've been worse at home. So what do you attribute that to? Because to me, that's kind of weird. You just mentioned how it's a great home field, but yet they haven't taken advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of being good on the road, defense travels, and the way that they play gives you an opportunity to be in a lot of those games. And so, the defense is going to show up. They're going to be able to run the football a little bit, and then obviously they've been efficient on offense. I think part of it is probably who they played on the road. Maybe they've had easier matchups, when they've gone on the road. Obviously, you look at that Commanders game that Jaden gets hurt. The Commanders are banged up, and they're able to win on the road in that one. I believe, did they win at Pittsburgh this year?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a legitimate win. I think Pittsburgh is, even though they got, blown out by the Chargers over the weekend, I think Pittsburgh is a legitimate team. So that might be their best win this year, is going to Pittsburgh. Yeah, I hear you. 41-year-old Rodgers. But there's struggles at home. I mean, it's interesting because they were so dominant at home in the early, tenure with Pete. And it was because of that defense. They could kind of pin their ears back. You had to go silent count, the way they played. And I know when I was able to talk to John Snyder earlier this year, and he mentioned kind of wanting to get that home field, back, being able to be successful at home. And I think he thought that he attributed to not being dominant defensively, that they had been soft defensively the last couple years of Pete's tenure. And that was part of the reason that, they had lost that home field advantage, because they were playing from behind a lot.
Eric, let me express all my concerns with Seattle, and then I'll ask you a question here. But, I get they're doing well, but to me, it's a red flag that they don't really have a solid running game. Like, I don't get the deal with Charbonnet and Walker. Why can't they figure that out? That's a good 1-2 punch, but they're not really efficient there. I worry about them being too reliant on JSN, a great wide receiver. I think has emerged as a top 5 wide receiver. Excellent choice to go with him over DK Metcalf. You couldn't pay both guys, so you went with the right guy there. And then I worry about Sam Darnold becoming a pumpkin again. Like, I get they jumped on the Cardinals 35-0, but that wasn't his best game. He actually struggled a lot. And, and he was lights out in that Tampa Bay game. He threw an interception at the end. It wasn't his fault, but he has moments where he does tend to fall apart at the end there. So I worry about him facing that front against the Rams here. But here's the question. I like the defense. It's just they don't have this the elite playmaker. They don't have a blue chipper. Maybe I could be wrong. You can let me know some of these guys. I get that Byron Murphy II is starting to have that breakout year, but he's not a Jalen Carter. He's not really there yet. Leonard Williams is very underrated, but he's not like he's not like a Nick Bonito in Denver, who I think is a better player. I know they're different positions, but I'm trying to compare Seattle and Denver, and Denver has Nick Bonito and Patrick Surtain II, the cornerback. Who are the elite playmakers in this defense? Is it just a scheme fit? Are guys in the right position to succeed? What makes this defense that good?
So I think it's scheme, part of it, and finding the right pieces that fit the kind of players that they want at each position. But I do feel like they have dudes too that are just not nationally known names. You mentioned one of them. I think Leonard Williams is one of the best defensive tackles in the game. It probably doesn't get enough shine because he's way up there in the corner of the Pacific Northwest, and maybe doesn't have the sack numbers like an Aaron Donald would have from a defensive tackle position. But you have to double him. If you don't double him, he's going to wreck the game. He's that kind of player. And I think the other guy is Devon Witherspoon. His versatility, he kind of gets lost a little bit because he's not, a Patrick Surtain lockdown outside corner. They use him inside a little bit on the slot. He can play outside, but that's not really his strength. He's obviously a guy that's going to come hit you, but he's light. He's only 185 pounds, and he's already been dealt with some injuries the last couple of years. Boya Mafe has been a guy that can make plays for them. Obviously, they brought in DeMarcus Lawrence, who had the 2 touchdowns. He's a good player for them. Ernest Jones is solid inside. We know Ernest from his time with the Rams, and they moved on from him. But you're right. There's no Nick Bosa. There's no Myles Garrett. There's no T.J. Watt. There isn't that big. Max Crosby. I mean, that's kind of what we're looking for when you think of these elite defenses. Is elite players. Fred Warner. They don't have a guy like that. But maybe if they come down and beat the Rams convincingly, and somebody like Witherspoon or Williams pops, then maybe that's kind of the jumping off point they need for one of these guys to get a little more shine.
I wanted to add to that too, because talking about the defense and kind of switching over to the Seahawks offense, one of the things that's been I guess interesting about this team is that this team for most of the season hasn't trailed. I mean, it's been about, I think, under 50 plays that they've been ahead. So what I'm interested in this matchup is whether or not the Seahawks offensively, and you talked about Snyder, the GM there, and one of his biggest issues was not being able to draft a good offensive line. It seems like because of the OC that they brought in, they've been able to kind of not fix it, but kind of roll along, without having fixed it. I know
kind of mask it a little bit.
Kind of mask it a little bit, right? And so I think that's going to be my biggest thing to watch in this matchup. But for you, what is it that you're watching that you want to see from both teams in terms of, like Gilbert just mentioned, his biggest why he doesn't why he has some issues with the Seahawks? I guess at the same way too with the Rams. Are there some things too that you want to see from both teams kind of answer the call here?
Yeah, I think for me, Gilbert already mentioned it. Sam Darnold. I mean, I was at that playoff game in Arizona when the game was moved, when he played for the Vikings, and he was sacked 9 times and just kind of gave the ball away and gave the game away. I mean, it was an awful performance when you needed him to play at his best. The first week of the season, against the Niners, they're driving to score, and then he runs into his right tackle and drops the ball, and the game is over. So he's had those moments similar to Trevor Lawrence where you need him to make a play, and not only does he not make a play, he makes like the worst play imaginable. And so I want to see how he plays in a big moment where his team needs him to play well, and to see if he could kind of lead them. So that's one thing I'm looking for. And then I think the other thing is, you're right. As you mentioned, you look at that offensive line, they drafted the 2 tackles and they've done a nice job for them. They're still trying to figure out the guard positions, although they did draft Zabel at left guard and he's been really good. I think when I covered this team early on in Pete's tenure and Tom Cable was coaching that O-line, he always said it was going to take a while for that group to build chemistry. I don't know if you remember, but the first year when they traded for Marshawn, they couldn't run the football at all.
Yep.
And a lot of people up there thought Marshawn was a bust, like his first year. And I was at practice every day. I was like, no, it's not Marshawn. Like, he's legit. Like, there's just nowhere for him to run. So Marshawn also had to get understanding of how to run that zone scheme. And that takes time. It takes reps. It takes, learning the doubles and when to cut back and how to press the hole. So I expect, the second half of the season, they'll be a little better running the football. But ultimately, I think this is an off-season thing where they have to get personnel that kind of better fits how they want to play. And certainly that's going to be something that we're going to watch because, the Rams are going to want to stop the run first so they can pin their ears back and get after Donald, in those passing situations. And, when they have to pass, is Darnold going to be able to make the plays happen for them?
Yeah, Eric, one more question here, and I'm going to do the same thing here that I did with Seattle. I'm going to give you all my concerns about the Rams, then I'll give you a question here.
Yep.
Okay.
I thought the Rams showed a lot against the 49ers, but let's face it, it's not the same 49ers team. They're very banged up. But I think they needed to win that game to kind of close the chapter on kind of rocky first quarter of the season where you blew one at home week 5 against the 49ers. You blew one in Philadelphia. So there was a period there where I had no clue what this team is going to do. Like, yeah, they're beating up the AFC South. Big whoop, here's a sticker, but you're not really doing much when it comes to the NFC big boys. So I think they needed that game just to kind of get a boost in morale and a confidence booster. But we haven't really seen much from the Rams here. So, I worry about their secondary. Can they stop JSN? This is not a good secondary. Mac Jones again carved them up. But I know it was a blowout, but he was carving them up 2 games in a row. I worry about their kicking game. Is Mavis is going to be the guy there? I think their offensive line has improved. I like the way Matthew Stafford's playing right now. So, here's the question. Yeah, he's balling right now. Do you think this is a legit Super Bowl contender where you could beat a Philadelphia? You could maybe withstand if say the Detroit Lions go off offensively, you have enough guys in the secondary. Do you think this is a legit team to get past those 2 teams that are playing each other on Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, I do think this is a legit Super Bowl contender for a couple of reasons. First, Matthew Stafford's playing out of his mind. He's playing the best in his career right now. I mean, 20 touchdowns, passes, no interceptions over the last 6 games. I mean, he's one of the 2 front runners, in my opinion, for the MVP, along with Drake May with the Patriots. So, give Stafford his flowers. He's doing a great job of leading them. You haven't seen the head scratching interceptions that Stafford has been known for over the years.
Yeah.
I think he only has 2 picks or maybe 3 picks.
2.
So 2 picks. Yeah. So that to me, like, puts them in that conversation along with their defensive front and their ability to get after the passer. So they can get ahead. And once they get ahead, they can really get after teams with their front. And I think that makes them dangerous. But you mentioned the kicking situation. I mean, it's been an issue for McVay, I think, since Fossils left. They've just, they had Matt Gay there for a couple of years, and he was solid. And then they didn't want to pay him, and he went to the Colts. And then since then, they've really struggled to kind of figure that out. They brought in new special teams coordinators. They've drafted a kicker. They drafted 2 kickers because they drafted Sam Sloman too, and he didn't last very long. I think it was smart to go back and get McQuaid and just get a veteran in there that can do the job and that you feel comfortable with. And I think that helps kind of calm down the entire operation, and the holder knows the ball is going to be there. It sounds like that was an issue. I did the Saints locker room when the Rams beat the Saints, and Justin Reed had mentioned that he was able to almost block that kick that Cardi pushed wide right because the snapper snapped it on 1, but he was supposed to snap it on 2. And so that's why he jumped past the kick. And the kicker was actually trying to avoid him because he was so close. And people were talking about why Cardi started so slow as well, because I think it was supposed to be on 2. So anyway, it just kind of speaks to the larger issues with special teams with the Rams. And it is something, if they get in the postseason, is it going to be Mevis? Is it going to be Cardi? Is McVay going to feel comfortable enough to bring out a guy to make a long kick, or is he just going to, be Campbell and go for everything on 4th down?
Yeah, and that's a good point by you, Eric, because I was telling Gilbert against the 49ers, he had a chance to kick the field goal there on 4th and 2 they were in 49ers territory, and he chose to go for it. And so it doesn't sound like he's still convinced that in the kicking game. And the fact that they already waived Alex Ward just tells you, to your point, that they feel like it was the long snapper's problem. So we'll see. I think that's one thing to kind of keep in an eye on the rest of the season here, whether or not Mavis is going to be the guy, and whether they trust him enough to kick field goals, or they just want him to kick extra points.
Hey, the other thing I was going to say, Gil, in terms of your question, if it's not the Rams, like, who else is it? There is no dominant team in the league right now. There's nobody that's running away when you look at, the standings, either the AFC or the NFC. There's nobody that you're really scared to play. Even the Chiefs, they're 5-4, and I think the Chiefs are beatable. I don't think they're the old Chiefs where they show up and you're done. Same with the Eagles. I mean, you saw the Eagles played against Green Bay. They couldn't get anything going on offense. Drake May is playing great, but he's a rookie. They're young. Buffalo loses at Miami. I mean, there's a lot of up and down teams right now.
My only thing with that one, Eric, is like, yeah, the Eagles look out of sorts offensively, but it's just like they do the dirty work and they find little small advantages where a lot of teams don't like to look, or they don't like to.
Yep.
Okay, we got to get everybody involved. They don't care about AJ Brown complaining. You want to play physical football, short yardage football. You want to just sacrifice the offense so Michael Parsons doesn't get involved in the game. Like they do all these things that people don't want to watch in a football game,
Yep.
and I
Yep.
think it takes a lot of mental toughness to get over that. So can the Rams get over that? Can a team like Seattle, who's never really been tested, get over that? So,
Mhm.
just playing physical football and attention to details, I think they still have advantage with that. So I like to go with the Eagles number one. But yeah, and on the other side, it's wide open in the AFC to me. But I told Victor, earlier or last week on House of Horns, I think the Rams have a chance. It was the first time I said that. I thought it was going to be the Eagles, and that's about it. But the Lions are not clicking offensively. Dan Campbell's taking the play calling duties there in Detroit. But
Mhm.
I will agree, somewhat that the Rams could definitely do it in the NFC. I just think the Eagles are still a tier by themselves because they're so versatile offensively. It's ugly football. It's boring, but it's effective. It works. Can you stop the touch push? So remember last year, Saquon Barkley ran all over them, but Saquon Barkley is not being Saquon Barkley so far. So
Yeah.
to a point there. But Eric, we've taken a lot of time here from you. We appreciate it. Can I
Yeah.
put you on the spot for the final thing here? Can you make a pick, or do we have to wait for a story on Fox Sports? And plug a story if you want. Go ahead, man.
Yes.
We don't have to wait for a story because we don't make picks for whatever
Okay.
reason. I am writing something on Torrey Horton, who was from Fresno. It's kind of their number 3 receiver as a rookie that's come in and made a lot of plays for them, a lot of splash plays. So be writing something on that. So take a look at it. I agree with you. Unfortunately, obviously, I'm from the Seattle area, so hopefully my mom's not watching. But I'm going to pick the Rams here just because I'm not a true believer in the Seahawks and where they're at. And I actually like a decisive victory for the Rams. I think
Wow.
31-17.
Look at that,
Yeah.
Eric. Last time we had you on, or maybe it was for the Carne Asada NFL preview, we weren't really in the same thinking, but we're in agreement here. You should hear Fernando and Victor. They're throwing a parade for the Seahawks
Oh
already.
my
So
God.
we are definitely in alignment there. It was great to have you on, Eric, for all the insight. You covered the AFC West, NFC West, perfectly. You covered the entire NFL for Fox Sports too. You're on the MVP case too. I see all the work you do out there, all the great features. You talk to coaches, you talk to players, you talk to GMs, everybody in the NFL. So fantastic stuff by you, Eric. Eric D. Williams, Eric Dana Williams. You're not in trouble, but Eric D. Williams. So thank you for being on the show here, Eric.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys. I always enjoy coming on. Appreciate y'all.